All right, good evening, everybody. It is the Safety and the Sportswriter show with Knoxville Nate and Big Joe as we come here to talk to you on a Thursday night, getting ready for football season as it gets creeping ever so closer. Thank God. And the training camps, nothing really, you know, newsworthy or really great crazy going on in the camp so far. Nate, what do you think about what's going on? And it seems like kumbaya is around the NFL right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a couple of injuries, a couple of big time players getting dinged up, but all in all, nothing too crazy has happened. I think one of the biggest stories is obviously the first one on the list that we talked about, and that was, one of the biggest question marks was the 49ers quarterback position. Now they had three of them last year. In fact, they got down to the fourth
Right.
quarterback at one point. So we were all like, what's going to happen? I think there was a lot of speculation that Brock Purdy wasn't going to be ready for the beginning of the season, much less training camp, and he's out there running with the ones. And I got to be honest, I'm shocked by that. This is a serious injury. Nobody, to my recollections, actually come back and started after having it. Now, previously, when this has occurred, the doctors weren't as good. The surgery wasn't as easy. It's a lot easier today for them to complete it.
Right.
But I'm still kind of shocked that he's there. And this gets me back to what we talked about a couple weeks ago. They've got too many quarterbacks. They got Brandon Allen. They've got your boy Sam Darnold,
Oh boy.
and they've got Trey Lance. They got four quarterbacks, and it looks like their number one is ready to go. So to me, two of these guys are expendable.
Yeah. Um, you know, we've shaken our head about Sam Darnold for so long. You don't even want to bring it up. There's something that coaches love about him for some reason. He must be a good locker room guy or something, because everybody gives him a second chance. Obviously, on the field he can't get it done. Even I even think, as we always talk about, it's good to have one of those backup quarterbacks that can get you 3 games, 4 games if your quarterback happens to go down. But he doesn't even fit that bill. I mean, I think Brandon Allen probably fits the bill better than he does. Um, Trey Lance is going to be a very intriguing person to look at and follow, whether his window has closed. I wasn't a big believer in him. I can't say that I know for sure, because we've only seen briefly what he can do. And of course, he shows that athleticism, which is fantastic, but he'd be a project in anybody's eyes. And right now, I listened on the radio a couple of days ago, and at this time, I don't know if we've ever had the amount of young, some super talented, others just talented quarterbacks in the league that you look around and you go, where would he fit in? Who would want to take on a project like him? With the fact of the matter is, you don't really need him.
Yeah, I mean that's the biggest thing with him is this guy is definitely still a developmental guy, and that's why I guess I was so confused. I guess is the good word as to why the 49ers moved up and took him as high as they did. I don't think anyone else had him rated that high.
No.
Much less, would have used all that. They gave away a lot of capital to get up and get this guy, and he played in one game the year before. Now I
Right.
understand the season was cut due to extenuating circumstances, but he played in one game, and then he started one season before that. So it was the Mitchell. I call it the Mitchell Trubisky effect.
Yeah.
You play in 13 games as a college player, and then all of a sudden you're ready to start in the pros. No, that's not true. So we threw out a couple of teams the other day where we thought he might go, but in reality, it's going to come down to who needs a developmental player, and who has got maybe who doesn't like the developmental player they have at quarterback, or who doesn't have one and wants to take a chance on this guy. But the trade compensation is not going to be very high
No.
because he hasn't done anything, and
Right.
he's proved to be injury prone. So there's two strikes against you. You get the third strike, which is basically you suck, and he's done.
Right. And I think he's kind of uh, if anything, hopefully for his sake, he stays put and it becomes, Brock Purdy's caddy.
Yeah.
That's probably the best place for him.
Yeah.
If San Francisco wants, if as long as it's a bark that he needs to get the chance to start or wants some kind of big contract situation, which he's not entitled to anyways. I think San Francisco is the place for him to start. Unless, hey, there's always north of the border. There's always Canadian football. I mean, his game might be suited to Canadian football.
Yeah, that may be where he's headed.
He played in freaking North Dakota anyways.
Yeah, it was pretty damn close.
That's only a couple miles away. So I think, that's probably where, I think somewhere along the line, I think probably Sam Darnold or Brandon Allen is going to end up being the backup. I think, because it's not even, if you're John Lynch, it's not even a good look for you.
Right.
Where the last guy taken in the draft is starting over the guy you traded up to take.
Yeah, no, it's better to just move on, get your mistake out of the locker room and, go forward with the guys you have, because people are just going to keep asking the questions. People are going to keep, going back to, is he going to get to play? Is he the number 2? What if Brock Purdy doesn't play well? Are you going to put Trey Lance in? It's better to me is if you move off from Trey Lance and then you've got either Sam Darnold or Brandon Allen, whichever one is better, Brandon Allen, being the backup. So right. I think that's the best way to go. But, it goes back to also, probably the second biggest question mark, in camp, in my opinion, is Deshaun Watson. And, we saw, a little preview of the Browns in the Hall of Fame game.
Right.
Not a whole lot from Deshaun. In fact, I don't think he played. Kellen Mond started and did okay. And then Dorian Thompson-Robinson came in and he looked really good.
Yeah, he opened some eyes.
Yeah, I think I've always been a fan of DTR. I thought he was a really good player at UCLA. I didn't think he got the credit that he deserved. And I was shocked to see him fall down to the 5th round, honestly, given his experience and given his talent. So I think, the biggest question is I want to see what Deshaun Watson looks like. Is this offense even really suited for Deshaun Watson's game? I don't know. But I can tell you that, he's got a lot of pressure on him. And he hasn't had a lot of in-game experience. He played a couple of games to close out the season that did not look good. And that's a big question in my mind going into this season. It's probably one of the top 5 questions. What does he look like? And does he get back to form? And, if so, the Browns have got a very good roster on paper. But if that guy isn't Deshaun Watson of 2019, 2020, whatever it was, then all's for naught.
And the other thing about Deshaun Watson that you always got to question is his desire. When he dropped out, when he sat out that season with the Texans for no reason. I mean, he was getting paid. There's no reason for him to walk out. I mean, I understand that the Texans weren't going anywhere that year. They were a mess. But that really doesn't bode well as a quarterback when you just sit out and say, I'm not playing. I mean, you're the leader of the team. That's why you get all that money. That's why you're the one who's the face of the franchise. That's why they try and, sometimes listen to what you say when you want to trade for somebody, when they ask your opinions on things that really have nothing to do with you. They ask your opinion on coaching staff moves, things like that. So if you're going to be that guy, you can't just be, on the sideline or up in the press box when you're perfectly healthy, watching your teammates get their asses kicked. And, I know everybody says all the right things, but I'd really love to get a truthful moment. What do the Browns really think of him? What do his teammates think of him? I mean, he comes in, gets that huge contract, had never played a game, and, they had just, like him or hate him, Baker Mayfield, I'm not going to, we talked about him ad nauseum, but he did lead them to a playoff win. And all of a sudden you get the keys to the kingdom, and I'm sure there was a few people in the locker room who liked Baker Mayfield. And, like you said, It's not just going to be the press. It's not going to be the fans. It's that locker room. I wonder if he's won that locker room over.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't Deshaun Watson at Clemson. I mean, he's been kind of a different guy since getting to the league. I mean, he's still talented, obviously, but he was a leader at Clemson, and he led them, to national championship games and won a national championship, and he was the unquestioned leader, and I saw it going that direction in Houston, and then he quit and refused to play, and then collected $18 million for standing on the sidelines. And I think you've got to make up for that. I mean, you can get away with doing something like that if you come back and prove yourself to be a hard worker and to be a leader and to be a go-getter and be a guy that can lead a team to a championship. But we haven't seen any of that yet. So who knows if he gets back to where he was and if he can get the rest of the team, on his side. But this is a Browns team that we know the last few years they've been good on paper, but for whatever reason, it just hasn't looked that good on the field. And of course, they throw all the blame at Jacoby Brissett, but I thought he played really well last year, and it wasn't his fault that they lost a lot of those close games. He did enough to win in several of them.
Jacoby Brissett is what he is. Jacoby Brissett is a perfect backup quarterback. He's the kind of guy who can keep your head above water. Like you said, he did not play bad.
No.
It's just, at some point, I think the owner of the Browns, because he's had such a quick trigger on firing coaches, I think he wants to change that reputation or that narrative, should I say, about Stefanski. But I think Stefanski, he's right up there with Mike McCarthy as one of the first coaches that could be shown the door, especially if they get off slow in that division where it's going to be a horse race from beginning to end. There's not much that separates anybody in that division from anybody. And
that's the biggest problem right there is, what's going to happen in that division, because Baltimore isn't going anywhere and probably got better with the guys that they brought in. I think the coordinator change is going to help the offense. There's no more questions about Lamar's contract. He actually has some human beings to throw the football to. So, there you go. Good luck beating the Ravens. The Steelers are going to be just that much better than they were with another year under the belt of Kenny Pickett. And, and then you got Joe Burrow and the Bengals. I mean, the only thing going the Browns' way right now is that Joe Burrow's not on the field and is banged up once again in camp. So, but, he's been banged up 3 camps in a row, and it hasn't really hurt them throughout the season. So good luck in that division. Those teams are going to beat the crap out of each other every week.
Yeah, exactly. And, around here, I mean, I was listening this morning to Boomer Esiason on his radio show talking about the Jets. And, I mean, with all this going on, I didn't see Hard Knocks. I don't usually watch it. I don't find it that interesting. But from what I understand, I mean, they have everybody around here pumped up talking Jets. And, I mean, it'd be nice. You and I talked about this last week. I have a lot of friends that are Jet fans, so I don't really root against the Jets. I'm a Giant fan. But, man, those first 6 weeks, I can see them coming out of there 4-2. But, man, if they ever came out of there 1-5, it would be hell to pay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Jets fan, and I'm definitely more excited this year than I have been in a long time. But am I ready to anoint them a Super Bowl contender? No, I'm not. I need to see it to believe it, and I think it's going to take them a little while to get going. They've got a lot of pieces that need to gel together. But in that regard, they have a quarterback that can throw it more than 10 yards. So they're already ahead of the game than they were last year. I'm a believer in Robert Saleh. I think he's a good coach. I think he has the respect of his players. And I think he's got a good idea and a good understanding of what it takes to win in this league. So, I'm not worried about the coaching staff. I think, Hackett is there. He's had experience with Aaron before. And hell, I haven't seen Aaron Rodgers this happy since he broke up with his last girlfriend. So, what's her name? Wheatley, or the girl from Divergent. Once he got rid of her, he looked pretty happy. Kind of like when he got rid of what was the other one? Danica Patrick. Didn't he date her?
Yeah.
It's like whenever he dumps these women, he gets way happier, and he dumped the Packers and he's happy. He just likes dumping people. I think he's in a good place.
I gotta say, I never really heard a full interview with him until he came to the Jets, and I've been impressed. I really have been. I mean, he's an honest guy. Usually, like anything, I know as a former sports writer, that sometimes to juice up your article, you pick the most controversial blurb without filling in what was said before it, what the question was, or what was said after it. And if you don't hear the full interview, you sometimes don't get the full story. So when he was sitting out there in Green Bay, I mean, how many times did I hear anything outside of a 10-second soundbite on ESPN after a game of what he had to say? And that's something I want to give the guy. I want to have an open mind with the guy. I think he, like you said, I think he loves being here. I think he's a really intelligent, fun guy to listen to.
Hey, you know what? My opinion of him has done a complete 180. When they drafted him, I was a huge Brett Favre fan, so I was already kind of down on him. And then he just kind of had his own kind of cocky persona. Didn't really, like the way that he handled himself. I don't know. I just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But I think you're right. I just kind of heard bits and pieces coming out of Green Bay. Now that I've got, where if you didn't notice, towards the end of his career there in Green Bay, he started to control his own narrative. He would only talk on the Pat McAfee show. He would only go and do interviews where he got to control what was released and what was said and what was talked about. And I think that really helped me, as far as to learn what he was about and who he was. And now I'm a big fan of his. And I've really liked the way he's handled himself in New York. He's been open to the media. He's been very open about, where he's at in his career and where he's at with the Jets. And let's be honest, man. I mean, he's been a great teammate so far. He's been there the whole time. He didn't have to show up, at voluntary camp. This guy's been in the league for 20 years. He's won 4 MVPs. He didn't have to be there at the voluntary practices, but he was, because he wants to make this thing work, and he's doing everything he can to try and do so.
Well, like I said, when I heard him in that interview and I heard him say, and this was the big thing that came to mind for me, was when they asked him if he was going to stay, and as he said, he goes, for what the Jets gave up to get me, it would be kind of a ripoff if I just left after 1 year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, who knows? I mean, the one thing, it's going to be very interesting. I mean, when you talk about how long is he going to play and stuff like this, and I mean, he's had a few injuries in his career. He's had but his legs have never been injured, and it's more about his upper body, his shoulder, things like that. And the other thing about it is, he was a better athlete than Brady. So when Brady started to break down, you could see he didn't have the athleticism to carry him. This guy is an athlete. He might be the guy who can play till he's 45.
I agree. And, they act like, he's lost. Like, they were kind of talking like he had lost something because of last year. He was playing his best football at the end of the season. It just took him a little while to get these rookies and these first-year players with him on the same page. They got rid of Devontae Adams. He went to Las Vegas, and they were starting over with a whole new cast of characters. Once he figured out, and the coaching staff figured out which one of these guys could play, and then they got on the same page and started doing the things that Aaron was telling them to do. Hell, they almost made the playoffs. So I don't think he's lost anything. And I saw a couple pictures of him and watched some video of practice, and he looks to be in the best shape that I've ever seen him in. So I'm looking forward to seeing what this year looks like. And, they've got the right mentality going on right now in New York. And that sometimes that's the best thing to get taken care of first.
Well, and the other thing about it is, in the other thing we got to talk about is he injured his thumb in the Giant game. We don't know how bad it was and how much that affected him for a few weeks before it either healed up or he learned how to play with it, whatever. And I think a lot of it had to do with the narrative. Everybody knew he was trying to get out of Green Bay. He wasn't particularly playing as well as you're used to because for a number of reasons, including that injury. And I just think everybody wanted to pounce on him. And
Yep.
that's where it was. That's
Well,
where they thought
they were all talking about benching him. Remember?
Yeah.
They were like 3-7 or 3-6 or whatever it was, and they're like, "Oh, how bad can this get? Is it time to move on to Jordan Love?" And I'm like, Aaron Rodgers is not the issue here. He's won two MVPs in a row, and you guys want to put him on the bench? I'm like, this is ridiculous. And then once the guys started figuring out what routes to run, and Watson got healthy. Things started clicking, and they certainly finished the season very strong.
Well, like I said, it's going to be those first 6 weeks to see how that works out, and we'll see what's going. And then across town, I'm heard Saquon looks really good. Waller looks really good in camp. I think the Giants are going to be okay. I just don't. I think the Giants can improve and not make the playoffs this year. I think they can become a better team, but still not make the playoffs because, what they got? The Giants worried me. They've got to find a way to at least beat the Eagles once and take the Cowboys out from in front of them. They've got to jump over the Cowboys somehow this year, and that's all going to end up on Daniel Jones' shoulders. And I've heard mixed reviews. I heard he didn't look good against Detroit, but I also heard he's having a great camp. And it could be one man or two man's opinions. You never know what they're talking about.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned several weeks ago, my biggest thing was Darren Waller and whether he could get back to the Darren Waller that we all know and love. And from what I've heard, he's been healthy. He's been dominant in the Giants practices. And the main thing is he's been healthy for the entire stretch of practice. So that, to me, is good news for the Giants moving forward. Also on defense, apparently Jason Pinnock has locked up the starting safety job across from Xavier McKinney. So they've got two guys that know what they're doing. And then it looks like Trey Hawkins is actually, getting a lot of buzz, even more buzz than first-round pick Deontay Banks. So they've got two rookie corners who are both going to contribute in year one, and that's music to a lot of the Giant fans' ears because they certainly need help in the defensive backfield.
Another thing in this article about going around camps. The Chargers, they're another team that I'm going to keep my eye on this year because, they're in that division. It looks like the Raiders are going to just tread water. Denver, they're getting injured. They're getting beat up. They're losing some big time players in camp that may or may not come back. Sean Payton might be one of the smartest coaches that's ever been, but he's got to have players. And the Chargers should they've got to feast on those two teams and then somehow go nose to nose with the Chiefs. And I don't know if they're ready for it yet. What do you think about the Chargers?
Yeah, both these teams had injury problems last year. I'm talking about the Chargers and the Broncos, but it seems like the Chargers are in better position right now from an injury standpoint. J.C. Jackson is a guy who we all were expecting big things from last year after his signing, getting him away from New England. And, he never really got on the field and missed a lot of time and had a really bad injury. And it looks like, he may make his way back this year. And I love a lot of the offseason moves that the Chargers made. I loved a lot of their additions that they did through the draft. And, my biggest addition is obviously the wide receiver that they got out of TCU. Another big guy, because the biggest problem that I saw with the Chargers last year was when Keenan Allen was out, when Mike Williams was out, they struggled. Okay. Yeah. That's just a fact. They had trouble moving the football when those two guys weren't out there. And guess what? They're both healthy now, and they've got this rookie that can take a lot of the pressure off of them. So I think the Chargers are a team that should be good to go. And then Asante Samuel Jr. He's gonna be out there. He's apparently been looking pretty good in camp. And Jasir Taylor is another corner who should be able to step up and help if JC isn't ready to go right when the season begins. But the quarterback's got his deal done. Zion Johnson's been moved from right to left guard where he feels more comfortable. And, Rashawn Slater's back from injury. So I think the Bolts are in great shape. At that same time, I'm worried about the Broncos. There's a lot of pressure on them to, pick up the pace from last year. And once again, they're already having tons of injuries. Tim Patrick tore his Achilles. KJ Hamler's got heart issues. Jonas Griffin, who is set to be a big-time piece at linebacker, he tore his ACL. Riley Moss, the rookie corner, is out for at least a month or two. And, Cortland Sutton is just been kind of a disappointment. They've got some issues. Javonte Williams is coming back from ACL. They're saying that he's ready to go, but we all know from watching these other guys, sometimes it takes a while for these running backs to regain form after ripping their knee up. Yep,
for sure. And, it's Sean Payton's there, I think. I mean, he's there for the long haul. The eyes are going to be on Russell Wilson. Is Russell Wilson done? Can he recover or get back to, if you go back 4 years, everybody loved Russell Wilson. Now everybody has varied opinions on him, and a lot of them are bad. So he's another guy that's got to recover, get people feeling good about him again. And it's going to be interesting to see if he can do it.
Now, I think that a lot of people are thinking that it was more the Seattle system and the defense up there and just the culture that made maybe Russell look a little better than he was. And you could certainly sell that with the way that last year went, and everything got thrown on the coach. He took all the blame. They kicked his ass out of town before the season was even over. But let's be honest, man, you got to put some of that blame on Russell's shoulders as well. He's the guy that was making the most money. He's the guy that had his own office. He's the guy that had his own staff in the building, and he failed to live up to the hype. So, all of my blame on the Broncos season last year, it points squarely at Russell Wilson's shoulders.
No, I think you got to give Hackett some. Hackett was not ready to be a head coach. He early in the season, some of the decision making he did, was not exactly up to head coaching material. And
but they handcuffed him by giving Russell Wilson all this, extraordinarily superficial powers and made him he was like run. They felt, I'm sure Hackett felt like hell. Russell's running the show. I'm just kind of here.
I agree with that, except Boomer Esiason, not just to always refer to him, but he took on that when he was talking about the Jets, and he goes, look, Nathaniel Hackett, he goes, when you look at him now, the man's not a dummy. He knows football. He goes, he was probably not prepared to be a head coach. Some guys, he goes, are great coordinators. Norv Turner was a great coordinator, not a great head coach. It's easier. Some guys, people don't understand it. Like the head coach, you're the guy. It's got to be your locker room. You got to make the decisions. You can't be friends with everybody.
No shit. But my point is, you expect the guy to win the goddamn Super Bowl in his first year ever being a head coach? How about letting the guy figure shit out? How about letting the guy maybe have more than 12 games to prove that he can do it? Would they think they were going to win the Super Bowl in this guy's first season? I just didn't understand that. Russell played like absolute shit. He couldn't even lead the team down past the 50 in half the games, and they fired the damn coach before he even gets through his first season. Now, I'm not saying he did a great job.
No.
I thought it was laughable at times.
Yeah.
But you can't take on a first-time coach and then post all the blame on him when he's just trying to figure stuff out. Look at a lot of these coaches in their first stints. Pete Carroll didn't look good first time he was a coach. Bill Belichick had some issues when he was a first-time coach. Sometimes it takes a little while to figure it out.
Yeah, but it was. Denver has always been a little weird ever since. It worked out when they brought Peyton Manning in. They think they can. I don't know. They just run things, and sometimes you just scratch your head and go, "Well, what?" I mean, they actually. I mean, it was a known fact, or not a known fact, but I can't say because I now you didn't get it from their mouth, but they hired Hackett in hopes of getting Aaron Rodgers to go to Denver. That was their main goal. I mean, there were other coaches out there they could have chosen to go for, but they thought getting Hackett there, you get Aaron Rodgers, and we get Peyton Manning 2.0. But it didn't work out, and I'm sorry. Like I said, I think he's going to be a good coordinator. He's got a guy who knows his system, knows how to run his system. They are good friends. They are good buddies. They get along, and it's going to work in New York. Like you said, it didn't work in Denver because for a multitude of reasons. A lot had to do with the fact of the matter his quarterback and him could never get on the same page, and it just showed on the field. And like you said, Russell Wilson being a prima donna did not help anybody on that team.
Exactly, and that's why. And he's the one getting paid all the money. He's the one making $50 million. So, if anybody should be getting blame, it's the guy making all the cash. And I just think it was kind of BS to fire the coach before the first season's even over, and then it was all him. He sucked. It was all his fault. It's like, Russ, you suck too, buddy.
I know, but it's just like those first few games when he made those. I can't go over, but I remember the narrative around the first 5, 6, 7 games, where it's like, how does this guy get a head coaching job? And then it's just steamrolled. And then maybe their feeling was, we made a mistake. Let's cut ties and let's get out of here. And
my feeling was they made a mistake on the quarterback. That was my feeling.
We'll see. Let's put it this way: if Sean Payton can't get anything out of him, then we know for sure, because Sean Payton can get a lot out of quarterbacks. Just look what he did with Jameis Winston in 1 year, or a quarter of a year. He had Jameis Winston playing the best football of his career. So the fact of the matter is, if Sean Payton can't get him back on the same track, then we know for sure it's Russell Wilson. And believe me, I don't doubt it's Russell Wilson is done. I don't doubt that. I'm not rooting for it to happen, but I don't think Russell Wilson. I think it's, if you look out there and you're in a division with Pat Mahomes and Justin Herbert, and you're Russell Wilson, a 33, 34-year-old quarterback, looking at the back nine of his career, not a great move for Denver. Not a great move at all. When you knew that those two quarterbacks, you need a young quarterback. You need a young stud. You need to find a way to get a young stud quarterback.
Yeah, well, look at what Seattle did. I mean, they weren't sitting there crying when Russell left town. I mean, in 2021, Russell was 6-8 as a starter. He did not have a great year. And, as soon as he leaves town, Geno Smith takes over and has a much better campaign than Russell does down in Denver. So I don't think that, Seattle was really sad to see him go. And, I think there's a reason for that.
Yeah, we're going to see what Geno Smith. Let's see if Geno Smith is now the Jim Plunkett of this generation, or he just got one season together. He did do a good job last year. And we'll see. And I trust Pete Carroll, but also, they're not in a bad division for Geno. Actually, the Rams are still pretty much an aging mess. Arizona's a mess, and San Francisco, as long as Brock Purdy's upright, they're in good shape. Brock Purdy's not upright or not ready to go at the beginning of the season. There could be another opening for Seattle to charge through the door and get an early lead and then ride it to the playoffs.
Yep, there's no doubt. And, another team that's kind of worried me a little bit with the injuries is the Ravens. We talked about them having, a lot of positivity going into the season. Well, Patrick Ricard just came off the PUP list on Monday. J.K. Dobbins and Rashad Bateman haven't played at all. And, Zay Flowers, their first-round pick, has really been one of the most surprising bright spots during camp. So I think I'm a little bit worried about the offense so far because the defense have been dominating them. But really, that's kind of to be expected, in my opinion, with all the moves they've made on defense, all the continuity they have on defense, and considering they've got a first-time, offensive coordinator, first-year offensive coordinator there with Todd Monken, who came over from Georgia.
Yeah, J.K. Dobbins is I get this feeling that he's going to be one of those guys. You look back, and the injuries are just going to sidetrack him. He's shown flashes of what he could do if he just could stay healthy, and it just always seems to be some kind of a nagging injury. It's just Nick, sometimes a big injury that takes him out. So it'd be interesting. Hopefully, he can stay healthy or get healthy and contribute this year, and let's see what he can really do. Now, when you talk about injuries, I read somewhere that Doug Peterson's going to give Trevor Lawrence some preseason snaps. He thinks it's important. I mean, as an old-fashioned guy, I don't really mind it. But in today's football, especially when you're talking about that kind of a quarterback, and the fact that they did make the playoffs last year, and it seems like there's a nice opening for them to make the playoffs again this year, I don't know if I'd be risking Trevor Lawrence that much.
Well, the one thing that concerns me is, they've got some instability on their offensive line. Jawan Taylor's gone. He went to Kansas City. Cam Robinson is suspended for the start of the season. So they're going to be rotating a lot of new guys out there in the offensive line. And, do I want to, give my franchise quarterback who just started to show why he was one of the greatest quarterbacks in recent college football history. I don't know if I don't want to expose him a bunch, to a bunch of hits. But I'm always the thing where the only way to get better is to play. Injuries are going to happen. Hell, people have gone down already this season in non-contact injuries. So I don't worry too much about putting these guys on the football field. That's kind of what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Well, like I said, as an old-fashioned guy, I like seeing those guys out there, at least for a quarter or something. But also, the last thing I want to see is someone rolling up on his leg. And him, after watching what he could do last year, and really, he's starting to show what he, like you said, that Clemson he's not just a college quarterback, he's a quarterback. It'd be nice to see. So I want to get to this list of the top 10 coaches of all time. And this was put together. Let's give the guy a little credit. Noam Gummerin, whoever that is. Anyways, he put together a list of the top 10 coaches of all time, starting out in number 10 with Bill Parcells. As a Giant fan, of course, I love Parcells, even though he did, go to the Jets later and went to New England. But I mean, for a decade he put the Giants on top, made it 2 Super Bowls, made it to a third with New England. He always seemed to be the guy who could come in and correct the program. What's your opinion about Parcells?
Yeah, I mean that's what really impressed me with Parcells was, obviously his best years were in New York with the Giants, winning 2 Super Bowls. But it impressed me tremendously that he went to New England and took that team to the Super Bowl with was that Drew Bledsoe, I believe.
Yep.
And got it done there. And then he did a pretty good job in Dallas as well. I mean, those teams won a lot of games, and we're very, very, very competitive throughout his entire tenure. So I give him credit for being successful in several different stops. New York, both teams. That's two teams. You got the New England Patriots. You got the Cowboys. So he went to 4 different franchises and won at each one. And then obviously, your boy Noah Gummerman, whoever the hell that is, he does make note very, very well, obviously, of his coaching tree. Bill Belichick, Todd Bowles, Tom Coughlin, Sean Payton, Mike Zimmer. A lot of guys cut their teeth under Parcells' staff.
All right, and then I like the fact he included this guy because this is a man who's generally forgotten now, but was definitely an innovator at his time in the 60s and 70s. Lost a little bit of his luster in the mid 80s because he got old, I guess, or the team got old. Tom Landry, the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, when you talk about the 4-3 defense, when you talk about, you know, multiple offenses and things like that, and hell, whether you like it or not, coaches calling the plays for the quarterbacks. Tom Landry was right at the cutting edge of that, and he won. You know, 2 Super Bowls with the Cowboys. Made it to 5. Like I said, people unfortunately in this and the people who were born in the 80s or the late 70s only remember his last years in Dallas when, you know, they were getting beat up. But if you saw him in the 70s, they were one of the most successful teams in football.
Yeah, I mean, leading the Dallas Cowboys to 5 Super Bowls in 9 years, that's tremendous, and that to me shows a long term side of success. When you're a coach somewhere for 10 years and 9 years, and you go to the Super Bowl 5 times, that shows you know what you're doing. And Tom Landry is an innovator in this league. And I think a lot of people don't realize all that he did for the NFL, despite just making the Cowboys a household name. He also did a lot of things that the coaches still use today in their coaching arsenal.
And the next one, at number 8, is, I guess he didn't have someone edit this article for him because he's got Garord or Garog Hallis. I think it's George Hallis, but it's Garog.
I'm pretty sure it is George.
Because, I'll tell you one thing. This was the one I'm going to disagree with being in the top 10. George Hallis, innovator, Mr. NFL, nothing against him. Coached for a long period of time. Most of his success was really, really early. And the guy that's not on this list that I'd like to see there is Joe Gibbs. When you win 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks, that says something for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've got a couple of guys that may want to make this list or should be on this list. To be honest, George House was a little bit before my time.
For my time.
So I don't know if I can really break down his coaching style because I never saw him coach a game. But he definitely was somebody who helped the NFL be formed into what it is today. So maybe that's why Garod is on this list.
And at number 7, I think it's a little low, but Andy Reid. I think when the final chapter is written on Andy Reid, you're right up there with the greatest coaches that has ever been in the NFL. If he's not there already, number 7's maybe a little bit low. We'll see as we go down this list, but there's nothing but respect for Andy Reid.
Yeah, I think he's already higher than that. To be honest, I don't really like this placement of him at 7. He already sits at number 5 all time in wins. This guy's notion that the Chiefs were a laughing stock before he got there, I don't really understand that because that's not true. But he has turned them into a Super Bowl winning machine, which they really weren't. They've won 3 out of the last 4, and or they've been in 3 of the last 4. They won 2 of them, and they don't look like they're slowing down anytime soon. That being said, what this guy did in Philadelphia is what to me made him one of the greatest coaches of all time. I was in Philadelphia. I was covering the Eagles at that time, and let's be honest, man, they didn't have the most talent. Okay, right. They had some good players on defense. There's no doubt about that. But on offense, Todd Pinkston, James Thrash. These were the guys that Donovan McNabb was throwing the football to, and it didn't matter because of the offensive prowess that Andy Reid had going on. They won games no matter what because he knew what he was doing, and he was a great coach. And already a lot of the guys that coached under him are now getting their head coaching jobs.
And then the next 2 come together, Paul Brown and Bill Walsh. I mean, Paul Brown, again, another one you and I didn't see. We were too young to really see him at his best. That was back in the 50s with the Browns. Definitely another innovative mind. Brought a lot to the table as a head coach in terms of strategy. Went to 10 straight championship games, including the old a All American Conference and NFL. Produced a lot of Hall of Fame players back at a time when scouting and finding players wasn't like it is today. They didn't have these big. You had to, a lot of it was barnstorming and finding guys off the sandlots sometimes, and he did a lot for that. And then Bill Walsh. I mean, there was a mastermind of the offense, and Andy Reid's part of his tree through Mike Holmgren. The guys, the coaches that Bill Walsh has touched with his philosophies of coaching, especially of the offense. And people forget one thing about his San Francisco teams. They had a hell of defense too.
Oh, yeah. Well, and Bill Walsh, was a coach under Paul Brown. So
right.
He learned how to be a coach by watching Paul Brown. And Paul Brown coached at Ohio State. He coached and, he helped found and coach the Cleveland Browns. That's who the Browns are named after. That's why they're called the Browns, is for Paul Brown. Some people don't even know that.
Right.
And then he went on and founded the Cincinnati Bengals and went on to serve as their coach as well. So this guy not only was a tremendous football coach, but he was an innovator in founding teams that are still around to this day and getting the league on its feet.
All right, next is Chuck Noll. And this is the guy, as great as he was, this is the guy I would flip with Andy Reid. Nothing against Chuck Noll. He won 4 Super Bowls. You can't take that away from him. Undefeated in Super Bowls, too, which is a very rare occurrence, even for the greatest coaches, to never lose a Super Bowl. But the fact of the matter, he did it with one place, and basically for a decade with mostly the same players. And to me, that's got to go a little bit against him just for that. So I would flip-flop him and Andy Reid. I don't know about you.
Well, I think one reason that this guy is putting him where he is A, the 4 Super Bowls. I mean, that sticks out. And then B, the Steelers weren't really that good before he got there.
No, they weren't. They sucked.
They were horrible. And he turned them into one of the greatest franchises of all time who are still an unbelievable franchise. So I think maybe that's why he's given him some more credit. But I would have no issue with flopping him and Reid in these 2 spots. But I can't really argue against Chuck Noll here with all the things that he was able to do, and the fact that he was able to build a dynasty. Now, back then, it was a lot easier to build a dynasty because you didn't have free agency. You didn't have players refusing to play unless they're traded and all that crap. But still, he was able to go out and find talented guys, and he was able to assist in choosing players that would, fit his system. And he deserves to get credit for that.
All right, number 3, we got Don Shula. I'm going to be a little argumentative with this guy too. I mean, I saw Shula. I saw most of Shula's career, so I saw him. I saw him when he was in Baltimore, late in his Baltimore run there. Great coach. I'm not going to take anything away from him. Don Shula was a great coach and everything. He's the only one who made it through the whole season undefeated and won a Super Bowl. I can't take that away from him. Those great Miami teams, especially in the early 70s, were phenomenal. The one question I have, the one thing I do wonder if you'll agree with me or say this is kind of a point to look at, to not be able to win a Super Bowl with a guy like Dan Marino, especially after you won 2 with Bob Greasy, who was nowhere near Marino's talent. Kind of, it makes you scratch your head. What about you?
I'm not going to rip on him too much for, he went to the Super Bowl with Dan Marino when Dan Marino was a rookie. And, look back over time, some of these teams that made the Super Bowl, some of these teams that won the Super Bowl, it wasn't a team that had the greatest quarterback in the league. We think about Rob Johnson and Trent Dilfer and some of these guys that won Super Bowls, Doug Williams and You talked about three different
Mark
quarterbacks.
Rippon.
Yeah, Mark Rippon. You talked about three different quarterbacks winning in Washington. It's not always the greatest quarterback in the league, being the guy that wins every Super Bowl. It's just that's not how it works. But it's the best teams. And, let's be honest, that was one of the best teams, if not the best team of all time that they had, when they went undefeated there in the late 70s, mid to late 70s there. And nobody's done it since. So I think he deserves credit for that. And maybe they leaned a little bit too hard on Dan Marino there for some time. Maybe if they had gotten some better running backs or had a better defense at that time, maybe they would have won a bunch of Super Bowls. Who knows? But they did go to the Super Bowl with Dan Marino, and they were a very successful team with Marino as their quarterback.
Well, hard not to be with Marino, I'll tell you. But Shula was a great coach. No two ways about it. Vince Lombardi will always be on everybody's list. I mean, as far as commitment to excellence, never had a losing season. I think the thing that, the detractors, people that never saw him coach, I never really got to see him coach. I remember seeing the last Super Bowl he ever coached, but nothing else after that. I remember when he was in Washington. And that's what I bring up is the fact that when he went to Washington, which was a team that had been suffering for years of being terrible, with Sonny Jurgensen as his quarterback, who everybody made fun of. And in 1 year, he had that team headed in the right direction before he died of cancer. So who knows what Washington would have been under him. I got to believe they would have been pretty damn good. So I don't have a problem with Lombardi being up there. Plus, he's on the trophy, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, Vince Lombardi, everybody knows Vince Lombardi and those great Green Bay Packers teams. My big question to you is, do you have a problem with this guy putting Bill Belichick ahead of Don Shula and Vince Lombardi? Do you feel like Bill Belichick's a better coach than those two guys? Do you feel like because of what Belichick did in the free agency era, in the the fact that he was able to build a dynasty when it's almost impossible to do so, do you feel like that's why he gets the nod? Do you feel like Bill Belichick is better than Vince Lombardi and Don Shula? I mean, that I think we could talk about all day.
I think he's better than Shula. I think Shula was, remember Shula had, what's his name? Bill Arnsparger has his defensive guy. And also Shula was in a time when quarterbacks called their own plays. So the fact of the matter is like Greasy called his own plays. Earl Morrall called his own plays. Don Strock called his own plays. Marino kind of called his own plays. I think there was some kind of a meeting of the mind with the offensive coordinator there. So, I mean, I think Shula was a great organizer, great leader of men. But as far as being a tactician and knowing how to game plan and things like that, Belichick, I think, blows him away. I really do. I think Belichick has been so innovative, especially on the defensive side of the ball over the last 50 years, that you got to give him the nod on that part of the coaching. I don't think he's as savvy with maybe his personnel moves, but I mean, I think the whole thing about Bill Belichick now is the narrative now is shifting 180 degrees. They've been waiting for this forever. They couldn't do it when the two of them were together, Brady and Belichick. And now everybody's trying to say, aha, it's Brady. I think it's a combination of both. I think Belichick is Frankenstein. Brady is his monster. He made him. And I think it's going to be interesting how Belichick, finishes his time as a coach. He's getting up there. He's got to be getting towards the end. And
I think that's just ridiculousness. I mean, I think that the greatest coaching job that Bill Belichick ever did was the year after Tom Brady left, when he took a broke down Cam Newton and a cash-strapped team, and hell, almost made the playoffs with them. I mean, I just thought that was one of the best coaching jobs I've ever seen from him, and nobody gives him credit for it. So, I would say that, first off, Tom Brady, no one wanted that guy. Nobody drafted him. Do the Patriots get credit for drafting him? I guess they passed on him 7 times or 6 times till they finally took him. But, I think he should get credit for playing Tom Brady, considering he already had, Drew Bledsoe as his guy, who had already taken the team to a Super Bowl and was leading them to another one before he got knocked out by Mo Lewis. And he made the tough call of putting Tom Brady in and sticking with him and going back to Drew Bledsoe when Brady got dinged up and then going back to Tom Brady. I mean, these are the tough decisions that this guy has made and continued to win games even though these tough decisions were being faced.
Hey, think about when he first went to Cleveland and he benched Bernie Kosar in favor of Vinny Testaverde. Bernie Kosar in Cleveland is that's like benching Jim Brown. Yes. That's like cutting LeBron James. I mean, that's how revered Bernie Kosar was in Cleveland. He came from down the street. I forget what his hometown is around Cleveland, but he's like, within an hour of Cleveland, and he leads them almost to the Super Bowl twice. Belichick comes to town and chases him into retirement. It's like, the guy will always make the hard decisions, and I think he is right now. He's number one, and like I said, I understand this kid is whoever wrote this article. This is the tough thing. If you never saw the Green Bay Packers between 1959 and 1968, it's hard to understand the true scope of Lombardi. I read a great book on him, When Pride Really Mattered, which was put out years ago. And it's a great book. I recommend it highly to any football fan. And that's where you really get to know about Lombardi and how smart he was, because he really knew football too.
No doubt. But, I think some people, knock Belichick for what happened in Cleveland. But to me, it
was Art Modell.
Well, no, I'm just saying the fact that he got them to the championship game twice, and then these crazy plays happened. The drive.
No, that was Schottenheimer.
Was it Ernest? Who was the one that fumbled it?
That was Schottenheimer's days. Those were Schottenheimer's days.
Yeah.
When Belichick had it, he beat Parcells, who was coaching New England at the time, and I forget who he lost to. I can't think of who he lost to next week. And he had Testaverde quarterbacking over Bernie Kosar, and it was a big thing, a huge thing. And then eventually, Modell started the motions of moving the team out of town, and everything went south. And he took the collar for it. But I mean, 9 Super Bowls, 6 wins. I mean, what can you say? Almost, within 2 minutes of a perfect 18-game season. I mean, he's done almost anything you can do in the span of football. I mean, and like you said, in the age of free agency, the league has expanded to 32 teams now. When Lombardi was doing it, when Shula was doing it early, even when we talked about Landry, I mean, you didn't have the Jaguars in the league. You didn't have all these other teams in the league. How many teams were in the league? So it's a good list, though. Overall, it's a good list. Like I said, I'd like to see Joe Gibbs on it. Any other ones you think that didn't make it that should be on it?
I mean, there's definitely some guys that could be, John Madden. I think you can make an argument for him. The guy, he didn't coach that long, but hell, he had a lot of success in those years where he was the coach of the Raiders. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer, not only because of his broadcasting career, but also because of his coaching career. I mean, he was a very successful guy, even though he was very young when he took over as the head coach of the Raiders. So I think you can make an argument for him. I agree that Joe Gibbs is a guy that you could, talk about as certainly one of the best coaches of all time. I think you could also make an argument that the San Francisco coach should be higher. I mean, that's that certainly is a name that you could put up there with all these guys. I mean, those San Francisco teams were so good for so long and so dominant, and it was a lot due to the system that they were running.
Even though I rooted against them as a Notre Dame and Giant fan, I mean, think about if Jimmy Johnson had been allowed to stay in Dallas. what they
that too. Yeah, that too. I mean, he had success in Miami as well.
Yeah.
But he was winning Super Bowls, and Jerry Jones didn't like all the attention he was getting, and they had a little bit of a falling out. But he still became a Hall of Fame coach, and this was a guy who was also a Hall of Fame coach in college. So,
yeah, I mean, he's definitely in there. Of the new coaches right now, any coaches that you see maybe would be on this list in 3 to 5 years, maybe 10 years?
I don't know if you could take away any of these guys for anybody, but I can say that Pete Carroll has certainly done a tremendous job since he took over in Seattle, and what he's done with that Seahawks team since he got out there is definitely to be commended. Is there
Like
a coach?
Tomlin?
Is there Tomlin, I think, is a great coach, and I definitely think he gets credit for never having a losing season, and he should get credit for that. But let's be honest, a lot of Steelers fans think that he left some Super Bowls on the table when he had Ben Roethlisberger and had teams that were good enough to make it. So I don't know if you'll get a lot of followers or a lot of traction by putting Tomlin anywhere near some of these other guys.
All right, two last guys I'm going to throw out there. Had success already, or has some success. One's had a lot of success, one hasn't got the ultimate yet, but both are very highly respected right now. Shanahan and McVay, both very, very young. Both of them have potentially 20 more years of coaching in them.
Yeah.
I mean, both innovative in their own ways. The thing about McVay is he's already been to the top of the mountain, and there's always this little thing about, he's a Hollywood guy, good-looking guy. They're always talking about him going into broadcasting and pulling a John Madden, just retiring early and saying, that's it, I'm going. And he'd have with his personality, they think he'd have a long career at that. What do you think about those two? If you could project 20 years down the line, who do you think is going to have the better career?
Whew. Sean McVay's the one that's already got the title. But let's be honest, the Rams kind of went all in that season. They brought in Von Miller, they brought in Odell Beckham Jr. They did everything they thought they could. They went and got Stafford. They went and did everything they thought they could possibly do to go and get a championship, and it worked. But you got to give the coach credit for that. He kept it all together. He made it all happen. Hell, he took them to a Super Bowl before that with Jared Goff as their quarterback. So I think McVay deserves credit for that. But I could easily see the 49ers winning a championship. It's funny to me, Shanahan doesn't have a Super Bowl victory yet, but he's come damn close. In fact, he's been in the NFC Championship game, 3 times in just his short time up there. And, they've got something to build on. It doesn't really even seem to matter who the quarterback is. Their defense is so good. Their offensive system is so good. I could see him definitely winning a couple of Super Bowls here. So I think from a longevity standpoint and, somebody who's going to be around for a while, I think Shanahan is the guy to me that is probably the better coach. Now, these guys coached together back in the day and are good friends. So I think either one of them is both a good coach. But I just like the way that Shanahan goes about his business a little bit more.
Well, I think Shanahan is more the football junkie. I think he is a coach. He's a coach. His father was a coach. He's a very successful coach. He grew up around the NFL game. So I think he's more a junkie. And if you look at it already, he's produced 2 NFL head coaches. It was LaFleur. Was LaFleur from the Rams or was LaFleur from the Niners?
LaFleur was from the Rams.
Oh, he's from Rams. Okay, but you got Saleh. So each of them has a head coach in the league already.
Yeah.
So pretty damn good when you're that young and you're already producing head coaches on your tree.
No doubt. And let's be honest, he's done a pretty good job up in Green Bay. We'll see how he does without Aaron Rodgers, however.
It's going to be the interesting story. All right, let's see. We got a big show for you on Sunday. Let's let the people know what's going to go on with man coverage.
Yeah, we've got a big show coming up Sunday at 1 o'clock Eastern time. We're going to have former Ohio State running back, one of the all-time leading rushers in Ohio State history, Raymond Harris, also played for the Chicago Bears. He's been back at Ohio State as a director of player development, and now he's out on his own with his own company, what's it called, the EMD, and he is doing a lot of stuff to help athletes, help teams. He's kind of a coach and a mentor, life coach, mentor, whatever you want to call it. But he's been very successful helping players, helping teams get in the right mindset for success. This is a guy who had a lot of success at Ohio State. Kind of had his career, has been overshadowed by some other guys, but this dude was a bruiser and was a guy that just kind of personified the Big Ten to me when he played for Ohio State back in the day. And he's a very, very intelligent guy. He's got a lot of things going on right now. We're going to talk about the old days. We're going to talk about the new days, and we're going to talk about what he's got going on right now when we have him on Sunday on Man Coverage.
All right, people, we're going to call that a night, and you get home and keep that power on, okay?
God, I hope so. We're about out of candles over there.
How's the heat down there?
Not too bad, actually. The past week and a half, it's been a little bit cooler, which is nice because we keep having these horrendous storms that knock the power out. And when you're sitting in a house with no AC, the cooler, the better.
Exactly. All right. Have a great weekend, my friend. I will tune in on Sunday, and I'll see you next week. Everybody, thanks for tuning in tonight. We will be back next week for the Safety and the Sportswriter show with Knoxville Nate and Big Joe. Talk to you guys later.